This is the More to Life Than Money podcast. Real people, real stories, real conversations about wealth and abundance with your host, J.W. Rayhons.
Well, welcome everybody. This is going to be one of those lean in kind of conversations because our guest today is someone who commands attention, but it's from a heart of kindness. It's someone who just attracts people around her because she's got this love for listening that just draws out the best in people. It's someone who is in the educational world viewed upon as a leader, someone who drives excellence from an aspect of boldness for really wanting to draw out the greatest learner in every person. And she's also someone who women all around her from all walks of life, from any background, any set of circumstances, views her as a mentor, as a teacher, as someone that they want to aspire to be more like. And so it is just a joy, Maria, for you to be with me today. It's a joy to have this conversation, for us to just chat a little bit about what has led you to where you are today, some of the things that you've been able to experience, and how that will inspire any of you that are listening to us today. And this is also a person, and Maria, I hope you don't mind, but I'm gonna draw out some things that you've really been a part of and that you've led, and some recognition that you've received for that. And so as we start, everyone that's listening, check this out. Maria, throughout her career, if you will, has won multiple different awards. She's chaired numerous boards. She's been recognized as the Woman of the Year for the education women in Arizona. She's also been recognized as the East Valley Woman of the Year. And there's been multiple other state and national awards that you've received, as well as you've got an outstanding family, a beautiful daughter, a son-in-law, your wife Sharon that you've been together with for decades, and a granddaughter, and now a grandson on the way. It is just a joy to be able to have some time with you.
Really lucky, but you are too kind. Thank you for that kind introduction.
Oh, you're welcome. It's going to be exciting for us to chat today. And I already know ahead of time, for any of you, if you're driving right now, this would be a good moment for you to find a place to pull over, get some notes out, because Maria is also known for her wisdom. And Maria, that's something that we're going to talk about today too. You're probably not even going to see it come out of you. And yet, any of you that are listening, you're going to recognize it right away. In fact, I did something a little special in preparation for today, Maria. I reached out to some people who have known you for a long time. And I asked them, I said, what are some words that you would use to describe Maria? And there were some common ones. There were some ones that were a little bit different from one another. But I tell you what, there was a couple that just rose to the top. And one was your kindness, just being described as kind, being described as calm, but also being described as a change maker and someone who's innovative and inspiring, someone who's intentional. And then I had a few of my own too, because you and I have had the opportunity to know each other a long time.
We have.
And even when you were president and CEO of Chandler-Gilbert Community College, which, here in Gilbert, we like to call that Gilbert Chandler Community College, but you also were Vice Provost of ASU, and you had a capacity for building partnerships, which for you is so fitting, which I've had the opportunity to see you do that over and over in multiple different organizations. And then get this, you also founded a nonprofit called Positive Paths, which I hope we're going to get a chance to chat about that too. So I'm looking forward to where our conversation goes today. And for all of you, just be ready, because you're going to want to write down some of the things that show up in Maria's story.
Thank you, JW.
You ready to go?
You bet.
All right. Well, so I want to start with this opening question, and I also will share with you ahead of time. I hope our conversation ends up going way beyond where we start. But education has been your chosen focus professionally, as far as I know, probably from the beginning of your career, or maybe very close to. So
Very close to. I actually was planning on going into the business world.
were you?
My brother was the CEO of Sprint.
Okay.
He had just done his MBA. He was like, "Go do an MBA.
Yeah.
We'll go do fun things out in the business world."
Yeah.
And I thought about it, but I ran out of money during my MBA, and I went to
Okay.
work at a school. And I just found that it was the right fit for me. I loved the students. I loved working with the teachers. There were just so many things that resonated with me that I said to myself, I can use some of those MBA skills in an educational setting. And that's what I ended up doing for the last 48 years.
Yeah. 48 years. Isn't that incredible? I'm sure in some respects it
is.
feels like it went by fast. And in other respects, you're like, yeah, it's felt
Exactly.
like 48 years. Education has certainly had its cycles and its ups and downs throughout those 48 years. And so even that part of the story leads me directly into what I wanted to ask, which is why education? So you mentioned you found that it just fit, but
it was kind of
explore that with us.
That's one of those things where you have to be prepared in life that, your path may change in a serendipitous moment where you just recognize that something resonates with you differently than you thought. Business was interesting. You can make good money in business. You don't necessarily make great money in education, but when you find that something's a good fit for you and your background and, what you want to do and how you want to be with other people, you move towards it. And for me, it was schools.
Yeah. Well, and so I'm going to highlight something you just mentioned there because I think that is an important point. Even throughout our conversation, I want people to hear what are some of those like success factors? What are some of those determinants and even early determinants that maybe have helped you experience some of the great things in life that you've experienced? And you just mentioned one of them, which is you kind of have to follow those nudges. You have to follow those inclinations, that instinct that says, this is right for me. This is a path for me. And that sounds like that's what education was for you.
Yeah, I was so lucky. My parents were both well educated and they just set such a strong foundation in the house. It wasn't if you're going to go to college, it's where you're going to go to college. That was the conversation.
That's a pretty direct message.
It was a very direct message to all of us that we all had an obligation to do something important and to give back to the community. And that was just the way my parents were. There were 5 of us who were siblings in the family, and we all did quite well, each in our own chosen career path. But it was not clear who would have which path until you kind of get into things a little further and then you choose. And I happened to choose schools. Yeah. And I remember at the time, my dad, who was always very supportive of my own journey, he really made me think about it because he's like, oh, honey, people don't respect educators.
Oh, no.
You can't make millions in this. This spoken from a guy who spent his life in public service in the military.
Okay.
Grew up in abject poverty and went to the West Point, the U.S. Military Academy, and did very well for himself over his career. But here he was counseling me about, you better give this some thought as to whether or not this is the right path for you. And I did, and I've never been sorry for having chosen that path.
Well, and what great counsel from your dad, too, to ask more of that question. He probably knew you very well, which my guess would be, obviously I wasn't there at that point in time. We didn't know each other at that point in time. My guess would be if he had just told you what to do, you may not have necessarily followed. He knew to ask, are you sure this is something you want to do? Can we stay on your family for just a moment? Maybe some of your childhood. Yeah. So you mentioned a strong foundation and your dad's military career, military background.
Yeah, we lived all over the place.
Yeah, walk us through what childhood was like. 4 siblings, 5 altogether, correct?
Right.
Okay.
So I was in the middle.
Okay. Oh,
2
right
older,
in the middle.
2 younger. The peacemaker.
Yeah.
In the group, you learn certain skills just from being in a big family like that. But no, I was born in Virginia, and we just moved and moved and moved. Went to 13 schools before college. Wow. Lived in other countries. You learn other languages, the use of other currencies, the way other people live in this world and do things differently. And my parents were always the diplomats, and I think that kind of rubbed off on all of us growing up in our family. And they laid strong expectations, a lot of help and support, but clearly an expectation that all of us had an obligation to do well in our careers, to do well by our families, and to give back to the community.
Yeah. Can I ask about the strong expectations part? Because you've been able to experience a few different generations and kids as they start in childhood and they come up through life and then they go through secondary education. You've probably seen similarities in generations, differences in generations. And so I don't necessarily want to focus on those, but I am curious with having that kind of strong expectations. And you've mentioned the word obligation a couple times from your parents of like, you're expected, you're obligated to do well. Almost, if I interpret that, it's like utilize your gifts and your strengths and do something great with it. But it also sounds like the way you're saying it is there was a strong expectation of what you were to do to represent the family, if I could.
Oh yeah.
And so
absolutely.
Share a little bit more about that. How did that influence you, positive or negative? How did it feel as a child to have those kind of expectations? How did it equip you later on? But I'm just looking to see like what do we learn from your experience as a child, having strong expectations from your parents and this sense of obligation that you're going to do well?
Yeah, you can look at it a couple of different ways. Some people have asked me, was there too much pressure? But I think not. I think that it just makes it very clear in your mind what is expected of you. In many cases, as my dad continued to progress up his career ladder, he ended up being the post or the base commander.
Wow.
And believe me, you do not step out of line if your father is the post commander.
Well, I bet not.
Because your whole family is setting the tone for what life should be like on that post. And so there was just always an expectation that we would do what we could as a family to help the other families on post, to set the right tone, to be positive and optimistic in nature, to strive to do well, whether it be in the classroom or in athletics or in other, community activities of all sorts. And my parents were both like that. I mean, everywhere they went. My mom was kind of the ultimate philanthropist, if you will, everywhere we went, even though she had a great career prior to meeting my dad. They actually met in grad school. Very unusual
Oh, did they?
for a woman of her age to have even been in grad school at that point, because we're talking pre-World War II.
Oh,
era. Well, actually, they met just after World War II.
Okay.
At Iowa State University, where they met and fell
At
in
Iowa
love.
State.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're going to come back to that.
My mom was an Iowa and Nebraska girl. My dad was a Nebraska guy.
Okay.
And they met there, and their families ended up, supporting their decision that they wanted to get married and have a family. I don't think they necessarily understood what it would be like for them to be moving all over the world. That they wouldn't necessarily get to keep roots just in that part of the country.
Yeah.
But rather, the next thing you know, you're off to Italy and you're off to Germany. And
well, in the Midwest, roots is very important family really characteristic. Right, so that would have been very different at that time.
But they still somehow managed to kind of keep that grounding. I imagine that they were just extraordinary people, really, really good people.
Yeah. If you're listening to this, I hope you rewind about 45 seconds there and catch the recipe you mentioned in terms of you strived to be great, like you strived for success, whether it was athletics or otherwise, that you keep a positive attitude and that you keep a positive outlook. And even the way that you mentioned realizing there were eyes on you and your family and your dad making that clear that, hey, we're in a position where people will be watching whether we realize it or not. Therefore, you're not just representing our family, you're representing this entire base. And even that is an important lesson for any of us to realize that, people are watching even when we don't realize they're watching.
Oh, I know.
And so if you're listening, I hope you rewind this back.
They modeled it so well. Sometimes it's not just actually coming out and telling you this is how you need to do things. It's the modeling of the behavior. And we would see them be diplomatic and caring and kind and grateful to people and expressing their gratitude for people's contributions. And I think that was a fantastic foundation for all of us.
I feel like this is such a gift to be listening to you share that, because now I can even see where some of these outstanding qualities in the way that people describe you have come from. Because I don't know if you've caught on to it or not, but the way you just described your parents is the way people describe you. And that That
I can only wish.
You mentioned moving around a lot, different countries, different currencies, different cultures, different way of living. If there were lessons to share from that, and especially you getting, what period of life was that you got to experience that? Was that mostly
Up
through
until I
childhood?
went to college.
It was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So all of those years from birth through college were in the military, basically.
Okay. So when you look back on that, if you were to share the lessons you felt like you learned because of that way of life, what would it be?
I probably took a lot of lessons from my brother and older sister because they jumped right in. You'd be in a new community, you wouldn't know anybody. Your inclination might be to be a little shy, or to be a little reticent to reach out and get to know people. But because they were always involved and active, I kind of just followed suit.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to get on this team, or, oh, they do this here. This is how you get to know people. Or when people invite you to come out and play, don't say no, get out there and do it. And you start meeting people and learning things and, understanding the way things operate in that particular environment. And I think that has stayed with me over time. I'm an adaptable person. I don't mind different work settings. I don't mind a bit of a challenge. I don't mind meeting new people. Collaborating, thinking through partnerships. And I think, when I reflect back on it, it has a lot to do with all of those years, sometimes only 6 months, 9 months in a particular area. And if you waited, you'd be moved again before you met person one.
Yeah.
And so I think I was lucky to not be the number one person in the family to get to watch older siblings and how they did this and kind of follow suit in that regard.
Yeah. Sounds like you got to let them be an example for you from time to time. Something you mentioned in there too is just kind of, even when you're nervous about something, or even when it's a bit uncomfortable or it's new, you just have to go for it a little bit. You just kind of have to insert yourself in and then figure it out.
It is true.
That's such a great lesson as well, because we're all going to face uncomfortable situations. That's just a part of life. There's going to be moments where you either feel like you've been misplaced, or you're in a new area, or you're in a new position, or you've got a new title, or you're in a new relationship, whatever it might be. There's going to be newness. There's going to be moments of being uncomfortable, and yet go for it.
Right. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Why
absolutely.
say no?
That's how we experience life, isn't it?
I'll tell you a funny story.
Please.
Do you remember Arnett Ward, who was the
I do.
president of Chandler-Gilbert Community College?
Yes.
So people used to ask me all the time when I was a younger administrator and teacher at the college, why did you agree to do that? When Arnett would ask me something, like, hey, Maria, do you think you'd be willing to chair the accreditation thing? And I'm like, I don't know anything about that. Like, should I do that? Should I not do it? And my inclination would be to say yes. Yes, they're asking you something about which you feel a little uncomfortable. You don't have the necessary background or skills, but you have confidence that you can build the necessary skills and learn what you need to do that well. But other people would say, well, did you get paid more for that? I'd say, well, no, and, well, aren't you going to go ask for a stipend or, a raise or something? And I said, no, I felt kind of honored that she had confidence enough to ask me and think that maybe I could do it and learn it. Yeah. And what I found is that over the years, the more things I said yes to, the more skills I built, the more people I met, the more deeper understanding I had of all aspects of the college that I didn't understand.
Right.
Because I hadn't even been trained in education. I was trained in business subjects.
Yeah.
And it helped me. It actually propelled my career forward. And I think sometimes people who are inclined to say no or not accept the challenge that's presented to them, or just kind of lack the confidence, sometimes you just got to stick your neck out and give it a shot.
It is so true. Thanks for sharing that story too, because there again, say yes, even when you don't necessarily know what you're getting into, but have the confidence to know that you can learn. You can discover and you can figure it out. And you mentioned the importance of the people, and even learning from others as you step into those new areas. But you also give us a good principle in terms of that, people ask you, did you ask for extra money for that? And that's not always the greatest compensation. Sometimes the greatest compensation is what you mentioned in terms of the experience that you gained from learning so many different aspects of the college, and then later receiving the job of president and CEO.
That's right.
And having that background at that point, because you were willing to say yes, because you had the confidence, because it wasn't about the additional monetary compensation, it was about the experiential compensation that then made you
met people I otherwise wouldn't have hobnobbed with around the campus, understood what their roles and duties were very differently from studying them for the accreditation process and all of these other things she asked over time. Hey, can you do the college newsletter? Thinking, no, I actually don't know much about that, but I could learn, okay. You know? And I think that sometimes people give you these gifts that some people will turn around and say, oh, that's just extra work. And I viewed it as, what a gift, that she gave me the opportunity to do something like that expanded my skill base, expanded my network of people, expanded my mind in terms of what I was capable of doing.
Yeah. My goodness. Did you catch that, Maria, of one of your great qualities? Your view, your perspective on these, and you even mentioned them as opportunities that come up. One perspective could be, my gosh, that's a lot of extra work.
Right.
The other perspective you mentioned.
People say that all the time.
Yeah. And then you mentioning, and this is why I wanted to compliment you on that quality in you that says, no, what's the opportunity in this? How can I grow from this? What will I be able to explore and discover from this? And was it extra work? Sure, it was extra work. But that wasn't the perspective that you gave it. It wasn't the meaning that you gave it. You gave it, this is going to help me grow.
Right. And don't be confused. I don't say yes to everything.
Yeah.
But
well, we can't, can we?
No, we really just don't have the time and the energy to do it all.
Especially not more anymore, because we're going to get into where you're at in life now, too.
Right.
Yeah.
But sometimes when people ask you about things, even opportunities in the community, in the nonprofit community, where they say, and you don't have deep, knowledge of what their nonprofit does or who they're serving. But if you feel that there's a connection there, hey, you connect with that mission of what they're working on in the community, then why not say yes and jump into learning more about it and, bringing what you can to the effort, knowing that there are going to be other people bringing what they can to the effort, and collectively you can do really good things.
That's right. Yeah. Can I share one of the lessons my dad shared with my brothers and I when we were younger that you just reminded me of? Was this lesson of you can always change your no to a yes, but when you say yes, you can't change it to a no. And what you just shared with us right there is we're not going to be able to say yes to everything, but you recognize, find what you get connected to, find what carries meaning, or maybe aligns to some values, or maybe it's a particular mission or purpose for you. And then you can say, why not yes? Why not go after that? Why not try that? And so even that being selective, but there's a self-awareness there to know, what is it that I'm going to say yes to, and what is it that I'm going to say no to? I mean, that's been a hard lesson for me over the years, because I have a tendency to say yes to things, and I could feel connected and passionate
I
about
resemble
a
that
lot,
remark.
right? Yeah, exactly. And we learn from those lessons along the way too, of maybe when we have said yes to a few too many things at the same time, and then we got to navigate, well, how am I going to still pursue that, fulfill that commitment, and then move on to the next thing and learn from maybe that was a little too much. And so even there of just, there's going to be moments in life where maybe you say yes to more things because you have that hunger for the learning. You have the hunger for what is this opportunities is it going to present. And then there might be other phases of life where you're saying no to more things because you need to be selective on what you say yes to. Is it okay? I want to provide an opportunity. I don't know what's going to come out of this, but you've indirectly a little bit and a little bit directly mentioned specific people in your life that have had some influence, and they've helped shape you, they've helped influence you, they've helped direct you. Is it okay if I ask you, and I realize you have a large network of people, and so this is not to, in case anybody in your circle ends up listening to this is not to exclude anyone. I'm kind of putting you on the spot here.
Not. There'd be way too many.
Yeah, we'd be here probably multiple days. Just in who comes to mind at this particular moment for whatever reason, if you were to highlight maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 people by name that they just mean a lot to you. They've just been with you. They've just helped almost you become who you are. Who are maybe the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 people that come to mind when I word it that way?
Well, maybe I should put them in groups so I can get more of them in.
Okay.
Certainly my parents, who you've already heard about,
Okay.
my siblings, I think that all set such a strong foundation.
Mm-hmm.
In my educational career, as I worked at different groups, each group of educators that I met and got close to, I met people who were fabulous teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew I wanted to be like them,
Mm-hmm.
and then I started paying more attention and asking, can I visit your classroom? Can I come learn from you? Because they were so outstanding at what they did. Administrators who had such a way of doing things to make it look easy. Coaches who just, coaches work really, really hard.
Yes, they do.
All hours of the day and night. Most people don't understand how important they are in the development of a lot of men and women.
Mm-hmm.
But, watching how they handled people, how they inspired people, how they coordinated teams of people, all of those things were things to be learned. And so I was lucky I had so many people in the community, my immediate family, of course, but also colleagues with whom I worked. I mentioned Arnett,
You did.
but all the other administrators at the college were really fabulous colleagues and people, supportive people, inspiring people. There were so many teachers there who just went out of their way to help students. One administrator, who's one of my favorites, I just was on the phone with her yesterday, Lois. She now lives in South Carolina. I remember I sent a young woman who was having difficulties down to her office. She was the vice president of student affairs, with hopes that maybe Lois could help her sort out some of the issues that were going on in her life. She was having a lot of challenge and disruption in her life. And later that evening, I called Lois's home to find out, hey, how did things go with that young woman? And this voice picks up the phone at Lois's house, and I'm realizing, I think that is the young woman
Oh my goodness.
spoke to earlier. Well, Lois had invited her over for dinner and said, hey, listen, let's continue this conversation. She did way over and above what most people who are a school administrator would do to help a student feel like they belonged, like they were cared about, like they had more than just the 5 or 10 minutes that your assistant put on the schedule for them. And people like that, they really change the culture of an institution. They change the way things operate. And so I've always kind of leaned on Mary Beth Mason, who's still a neighbor of mine in Gilbert. You might know that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Her daughter Dana is in the community now. Their grandchildren in the community. Our families are quite close. But she was just such a fabulous teacher. I mean, I would hear students who took her classes say these things like, it was transformative. It was life-changing. And I'm thinking, from an English 101 class? Isn't that just your basic writing class that everybody has to take? I don't remember my English classes being transformative.
Right.
Anyway.
I don't remember mine either, but that's a whole other story.
I have to learn from this person. I need to go pay attention because I don't think my students are coming out of my class feeling like that. And I did. And over the years, I got better and better at doing these things from watching the masters of doing these things.
Yeah. You have such an openness, and you still have it today. It's not that you had it at one point and then you got to a point where you're like, okay, I kind of get it. You have this openness about you that shows up in the ways that you're describing the way you learn from others. It's such a neat thing to see in you, especially knowing how much success you've experienced, that you still have that openness. You still have that desire to keep learning. You still have that desire to allow others to shine. Can I ask about your immediate family?
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to share with us. And I realize with anyone's life, there's been complications along the way.
A few.
Yeah. You've had a few. But if it was just you and me chatting, and you got a moment where I'm asking you to just kind of brag on Sharon a little bit, to brag on your daughter Kate a little bit, her husband Drew, your granddaughter Carter, and there's a baby boy coming. And so if it was just you and me chatting, and you had an opportunity to just share with them what they've meant to you in your life, what would you tell them?
They're just amazing people and supportive. I wouldn't be where I am without the support that they've provided for me. Sharon is retired law enforcement, a tough career. She's a tough cookie, but she's also a wonderful mom, a wonderful partner in raising children. Kate, what a dynamo she is, my daughter. We were so lucky to get to adopt Kate when she was little. And she, dealt with things that most kids don't have to deal with, being adopted or being a different race than their, parents are. Or any number of other issues that come up when you're little and you're just trying to fit in.
Yeah.
But she had just such a beautiful spirit about her, a real joy in everything she did, and enthusiasm for life that has stayed with her all of these years. And she's done very well for herself. She and her husband, Drew, live in Queen Creek. Drew's a dynamo, a young businessman doing very well for himself. And they have a beautiful home in Queen Creek, a home we wish we had when we were their age. Yeah. But I was an educator and Sharon was in law enforcement, so we were not destined for beautiful, homes and things like that. And we knew that and we were okay with that. But now that we see them, we're very pleased that they are able to do these things.
Absolutely.
Carter is only one, but she's changing our lives because we're the full-time daycare providers for her.
Absolutely. She's changing your life in many ways.
There's a reason why you don't wait until you're this age when you get in your 70s. You're not usually, taking care of kids anymore, but it has really been a joy to take care of her. Yeah. And with her little brother coming along in about a week and a half now, we'll see how that changes things.
That's right.
But I view that as just, one of life's great blessings, that I've had such a strong family and supportive people around me who, offer me respite, offer me a lot of personal support and, encouragement towards what my goals are. And we kind of help each other towards what our collective goals are.
I believe it. You started a nonprofit, Positive Paths. Why did you do that? Why Positive Paths? Why the mission of Positive Paths? Give us what led you towards that, because that's not a small undertaking.
No, I know. That was not our original intent. So what happened was, at a particular moment in time, the state had to make very difficult decisions for budgets for community colleges and universities. And in cutting the budgets, the governing board, as they had to make very deep cuts across lots of things, the programs that got eliminated had pretty big effects on women. They basically eliminated child care centers on campus, which is one of the reasons that many moms can go to school.
Certainly.
Because most of them have responsibility for the young children. It's because you had child care on campus. Women's reentry programs were reduced, counseling for women, support groups, anything like that. Those were basically all obliterated in a period of about 18 to 24 months. So I gathered a group of really a powerhouse group of women from the East Valley, about 50 of them, out of the college. And we just sat down and we said, so what's our obligation? The government, the state, can no longer afford to fund all these things. But don't we have some obligation to do something about this? Or do we just kind of wipe our hands and say, gee, that was a shame. That's how it used to be. But, that's
not our
normal,
problem.
Right?
Not our problem, right? Yeah.
And a group of us just felt like it was our problem, and that we did have an obligation, that we were at the age and stage in our careers where we could do something and that we should do something. And so we did.
Yeah. You
so
did.
Basically, Kathy Tilke,
yeah.
Sandy Hudson, who's the CEO of Trust Bank, myself, worked initially to try to get this thing up and running. We started as an offshoot of another nonprofit. We were their East Valley Council, but over time, they just were not positioned. It was a hard time for nonprofits in general, but they were just not positioned to bring their services to the East Valley in the way that we felt that women out here needed. Now, Gilbert was younger then, and Chandler and, Mesa and Tempe, these were not historically long time communities. They didn't have deep philanthropic roots or a culture of philanthropy. But the services just weren't here. And so we felt like, okay, we tried working with this other nonprofit, but I think the moment has come where we're either going to have to, pull it together and do something different and make a difference. And here we are.
There was a decision point there.
It was really a major
Yeah.
decision point because we knew it would take a ton of work because we didn't have enough money to hire staff.
Mhm.
You'd have to raise a whole lot of money. But here we are 11 years later. We've offered more than $500,000 in scholarships to women in need in the East Valley. Almost all of the women we're serving are at or below the poverty level.
Mhm.
Most of them have had deep challenges in their lives: poverty, domestic violence, single parenthood, lots of reasons, incarcerated parents,
Mhm.
maybe foster care system kids who haven't had these, the best relationships with the adults in their lives. And through our scholarship and mentoring programs and our professional development programs, we can help guide them into a better way of life.
Mhm.
And that's really the key.
Yeah, and you've done an incredible job with that, and it's grown
Thank you.
tremendously over that time period. And here it started, and this is where I hope all of you listening, you caught on to this. There was something outside your control that happened,
Yeah.
and you recognized there's a group here that we still need to serve. They need us to do something about it. And so outside your control, funding goes away, and yet you gather a group of women and figure out, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to continue to serve this population of our community?
That's right.
Because it's going to empower their lives.
That's right.
And that's what you captured the
if
opportunity
you don't,
of.
You also have to look at what the consequences will
absolutely.
be of not taking action.
Yeah.
You get into issues of intergenerational poverty.
Mhm.
And we're believers that if you can help the mom, it helps the kids, it helps the whole family, it strengthens the community.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it sure does. There's a ripple effect there of impact
Mm-hmm.
that goes, you mentioned generational. It's a generational
That's right.
empowerment for that family, each family at a time, each woman at a time that you do that with. And I'm so thankful that we highlighted that. I hope all of you have stuck around this far into the conversation so that you could pick up on that, because these are the nuggets that allow you to kind of experience the joy and fulfillment in life that you're able to experience, Maria. And that's what I'm hoping everyone is gaining from this conversation. I do want to ask a couple of final questions.
Yeah.
And so here's what I'd like to ask you. And this is where we think about where you're at in life now, what you've learned along the way, how it's influenced what you value and what you don't. And it leads you into where you are today. But if at this very moment, I was to ask you, what's important about money to you? What would you say? What's important about money to you?
Enough to be stable. Other than that, it's not the end all by any means. It helps you get a few nice things along the way and feel stable and put food on the table and a good roof over your head. But it's just not the goal for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not the permeating factor in all the things that I do. I've made a lot of choices that have led me away from investments. But even people who make money, I'll bring up my brother Dan as a good example. So, he's a millionaire. He became the CEO. He was the CEO of AT&T Wireless, of Sprint. He's a big businessman.
Mm-hmm.
But he also is quite a philanthropist. Giving away millions of dollars, he and his wife and family, to the Boys and the Girls Clubs, to other organizations that he felt needed something. And I think that was the foundation that our parents kind of laid, this obligation to give back.
Yeah. Well, and even there, you mentioned generosity and giving. The interesting thing about generosity and giving is that when you give something away, and if we are talking about money, so if you give away, and especially if you make it a priority, and you give a portion of what you make away, do you know what you're psychologically telling yourself? That you don't need it all. You don't need all of it. If you're giving some of it away, you're telling yourself, you're giving yourself that little bit of peace, that little bit of freedom to go.
But that is a nice element of making decent money, is that you do have capacity for helping other people.
Absolutely.
With it. And that's a really nice feeling too.
Yeah. So I have another question for you.
Okay.
And I'm really looking forward to kind of what your definition of these two words are. And it's because these two words actually carry very different meanings for different people. So enlighten us. If I asked you, how would you define wealth and abundance? Like what is wealth and abundance to you? How would you describe wealth and abundance to other people?
Happiness, gratitude, a sense of there's enoughness. That was a concept we always used to tell each other, we don't have everything, but we have enough.
Yeah.
There's enoughness here.
Yeah.
But, you have a strong family, you have a support system, you have people you enjoy spending time with, work that you enjoy doing, that is fulfilling to you, that helps other people. So you end up feeling good at the end of the day. You can sleep well at night.
That's right.
And those things. So when I think of wealth and abundance, it's less about, physical money or physical things. It's more about people, relationships, the difference you're able to make in the community as a result of the work that you do, and things of that nature.
Yeah. You've summed that up so well. People, relationships, what you do in the community. You mentioned gratitude, happiness.
Yeah.
Wealth and abundance pour over into every area of our lives.
And I feel so lucky that way.
You have a lot
lucky.
of that, and you've created it. And I hope that you even see that in the way that you've created and designed that in your life. You've had an openness to it, and you've had a gratitude for it, and it continues to just abundantly bless you over and over. And you've really done that today. And so I thank you so much for the way you've been open, the way you've shared your story, the way you've shared some stories of others, how they've impacted and influenced you, and even given us kind of your own definition of what wealth and abundance looks like in your life. For all of you that are listening, if there's any part of Maria's story that's resonated with you, or you thought of someone while we've been visiting, please share this with them. Send it over to them. Allow Maria and your time here and your effort and even just your life, your story, allow Maria's story to have that inspiration in other people that you know and you love and you care about. And just always remember, there's more to life than money. Thank you, Maria. Really appreciate you being here today.
Thanks, JW. My pleasure.
Come back for our next episode of the More to Life Than Money podcast. Securities and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA, SIPC. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity.